Hi, you got Megan and Sophie here with our first ever book review. And for this inaugural book review, we are looking at Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides.
So today we're gonna talk about what the book is about first, and basically that means talking about characters and themes. Then we're each gonna give the one word that we would choose to describe this book. Then we're gonna read some passages that we chose that really describe what the book is, like how the author writes, etc. These passages will illustrate how this book feels when you're reading it. Lastly, we will give you our Tushti book review, which is basically a system we devised to rate books.
Alright, let's now talk about the characters. So the best way to talk about the characters of Middlesex is to actually draw the family tree diagram, since many of the characters are from the same family. The book starts out with two characters named Lefty and Desdemona, who are brother and sister. We don't know much about their parents, except for that they died in the war, and that they are all from Asia Minor. They have a cousin named Sour Melina, who moved to the US to marry Jimmy Zismo, who is also Greek. And despite being brother and sister, Lefty and Desdemona actually get married. And they have two kids, Milton and Zoe. Meanwhile, Jimmy and Sour Melina have a child named Tessie. So Tessie and Milton are actually second cousins, but they also get married. They have two kids, one, a son, who throughout the whole book is only referred to as Chapter 11, and Calliope, or later known as Cal. Calliope is the main character and the narrator of Middlesex. Another minor character is Father Mike, who marries Zoe. He plays an important role towards the end of the book. So this is the highly incestuous family tree of the Stephanides family.
Let's now talk about themes. We chose 3 themes that describe the book. They are incest, intersex, and silence/secrets. So first, incest. There's a lot of incest going on, as you probably have heard already from the character section, and it basically defines the rest of the book and makes it seem as if everything is fated because of this. It just makes it possible, or very likely, that Calliope/Cal will be intersex because of this gene that is carried, and because of all this inbreeding, it remains in the family and remains in everybody's blood, and it becomes very likely that it will be expressed in the future. And this is also like the link that basically weaves the book together and also brings us to our next theme.
So the second theme is intersex. Of course, the main character, Calliope, is intersex. And while this book consists of many different stories and many different sort of subplots, the main theme is this beautiful coming-of-age story of Cal. And even though it's a multi-generational novel, the coming-of-age part really starts 2 generations before Cal is born. You get to see all of the things that Cal goes through as an intersex character, so that is very much a key part of the book.
The last part, which is also crucial to this book and makes it so interesting, is silence/secrets. So basically it convolutes everything, makes everything more complicated. The fact that nobody talks about what they're hiding. For example, Desdemona and Lefty, when they leave Greece because of the Turkish invasion, they come to America and they're met with their cousin. Her name is Sormelina, and she also has a secret of her own. She is a lesbian.
She gay.
So that's why she left Greece in the first place and came to America to marry a man. But because they have that on her, she does not spill the beans about them being married to each other while they are brother and sister.
So once again, main themes: incest, intersex, secrets. So if I had to describe this book in one word, it would be different. And that's partially because it was very different than any book I've ever read up until that point. I had never read a multi-generational novel. I have since, and I find that they're always very interesting, but this was my first experience into that, which was really different for me. The other way it's different is that Calliope, while being intersex, which is kind of rare, goes through changes in adolescence that I think we can all kind of relate to, all that feeling of being different and that feeling of feeling kind of like an outcast at sometimes, and I found that just very relatable.
The word that I would choose to describe this book is quirky, and the reason is that every single character in the book is quirky. The book itself is quirky because of the choices that it makes in the way that it talks about their characters, how they relate to each other, their own quirks, and how they're so different from each other. So even though you have so many characters interacting and you change perspectives-ish because it's always Calliope / Cal talking, but you always know who you're talking about, who the author is talking about, because they're so different between each other. It's not like the lines get blurred ever. They're all super unique, and that's why this book is quirky.
So what's your favorite quirk of one of the characters?
I think my favorite quirk is Milton's love of Cadillacs. It's so funny because I don't really understand it, and I think it's hilarious. So I think that's my favorite quirk, and just how the author describes it. I don't have the words right now, I don't remember the passages, but I just love how the author describes that little obsession that Milton has. We'll now read you some passages that we chose from the book.
I was born twice. First, as a baby girl on a remarkably smogless Detroit day in January of 1960, and then again as a teenage boy in an emergency room near Petoskey, Michigan in August of 1974. I chose this passage because it's literally the very first sentence in the whole book, and he continues to summarize the book throughout, like the first few pages, and I think it's pretty amazing. Also because as a reader, you forget about everything he says then. So even though he says what's gonna happen already before anything happens, you forget by the time that you get to these parts.
I was only feigning squeamishness. In actuality, I wouldn't have minded sharing the object's toothbrush. I wouldn't have minded being the object's toothbrush. I was already well acquainted with the splendors of her mouth. Smoking is good for that. You get a full display of the puckering and the sucking. The tongue often makes an appearance, licking from the lips, any stickiness imparted by the filter. Sometimes bits of paper adhere to the bottom lip, and the smoker, pulling them away, reveals the candied lower teeth against the pulpy gums. And if the smoker is a blower of smoke rings, you get to see all the way in the dark velvet of the inner cheeks. I like this passage because I had to bring up the obscure object, Cal's crush in adolescence. This passage is brutally descriptive and shows just how hard Cal is crushing on this girl. And last but not least, our Tushti Grading System.
TM. The first component to our rating system is the writing style, which basically means how nifty the writer is, how talented the writer is, how well he or she uses language and the beauty of the passages, the analogies used, metaphors, etc. Just how pleasing it is just to read because of the art that is in his or her writing. And in this case, we give the author 4.5 out of 5 because his writing style is great.
It's great. It's grand. So the second trait we rated the book on was entertainment value. So this just basically means how much fun did you have reading the book. You know, it doesn't matter if it's high lit or a 99-cent paperback you buy at a gas station. We gave Jeffrey Eugenides Middlesex 4 out of 5, and that was mainly because sometimes there were more interesting stories in it than at other times. And but overall, it was fairly a fun read.
The next component is structure, which basically means how the author organized his book. Because it was a multi-generational novel, every single choice of where you're gonna put things, are you gonna jump into the future, jump back, flashbacks, etc. matters because it can make it so difficult to understand. Luckily though, Eugenides did an amazing job at organizing his structure in this multi-generational novel. This is the reason why we gave him a 5 out of 5.
So the last element that we graded the book on was plot. And that's basically how believable the characters are and their personality traits, and also how well the story itself just flows. And we gave this 3.5 out of 5, and that's mostly because of the nature of the story. It's kind of plotless at times, and at times some characters sort of acted out of character. It wasn't really what you would expect based on how he portrayed them previously. And then lastly, we have an overall rating, and this is not, an average of the others. It's more just how we would generally recommend the book to somebody else. And we give Middlesex 4.5 out of 5 because it's just something that was really good. We both really enjoyed it, and we really recommend it to pretty much anybody. So go read it.